Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Amateur Repair Time. Tonight we're going to work on this super cool Kundo. I think it's Kundo. We'll look here in a minute. Anniversary clock. I don't even remember where I picked this up. I think someone gave it to me. They're not super valuable or anything. I might have bought it at an auction for, it would have been $10 or so at the most. But this is a kind of unique one because it has instead of being round, it has the elongated dome on it. So if you don't know the story of these anniversary clocks, you're going to love it, right? So the very first clocks, I guess, probably would have been sundials, right? But the first geared clocks were driven by weights. So grandfather clocks are like that. And so basically you have a gear in there and there is an escapement. So there's a little thing that goes back and forth that allows the energy that's stored up in the gear to escape at a set frequency. The pendulum makes that happen. And not set frequency. Well, yeah, frequency will work. And basically that's what keeps the time, right? And somebody created that, and it's just a genius device. Whoever came up with that very first clock, boy, they really knew what the crap they were doing. Okay, but that's how a regular clock works. It has a pendulum that swings back and forth, and as it does, there's a little crutch in there that goes back and forth, and the escapement allows the energy in the clock to escape at a set time, right? And this is all handled by the length of the pendulum and the weight of the pendulum. Not so much the weight, but the length. And so to put the energy in there that was escaping from the clock, what they would do is they would tie a weight around the gear, and then you would pull a cord, or you would wind up the gear, and it would wind up the string around that gear. And then the weight would constantly be pulling down inside the cabinet. So on a grandfather clock, they're actually still like that. So if you've seen a grandfather clock with those big weights hanging in it, that's what that's for. It basically is to give the clock the energy that it needs, that the escapement can allow to escape, so that the hands turn, right? And it's all geared, and it's just brilliantly designed. So that's how they were originally done. And that's way back in the day. I don't know when they would have invented them, but around 1850 or something like that, they started coming up with the idea to make spring clocks. So the reason for that was because the weighted clocks, if it was a smaller case, you had to wind that weight back up once a day. So every 30 hours. They got the size of it just right so that you had 30 hours. No, so why did they do 30 hours? So let's say you wound it up at 8 o'clock every morning. Well, what if you forgot one morning? As long as you got to it by about 2 o'clock, everything was cool. Right? So, interesting. So, they eventually figured out that you could use a spring. So if you use a spring, it winds around the gear in there, and then you turn a little key just like you did on the weighted clocks, and then that has energy in it, and the rest of it works the same. Well, once they were using springs, they could make the cases much smaller because they didn't have to. That weight didn't have to hang down inside the case so far, right? And so they could make clocks about this size actually. And there'd be a little pendulum in there that swung back and forth. I said swang. A little pendulum in there that swang. I've been listening to John Anderson again, just to swanging. What's the girl's name? Charlotte. She's my lover. She's the apple of my eye. Okay, so they came up with the spring clocks. Now, once you had the springs, most of them were 7-day or 8-day clocks. So now you only had to wind them once a week. Awesome. And then eventually they were able to improve on that, and they made the 31-day clock. And that was just by changing the spring and the gearing and all of that. I don't know if the gearing changed, but changing the spring. And so you could wind up your clock once a month. And this was standard for quite a while, right? Now on smaller clocks, like these little alarm clocks and stuff, those are probably all, some of those may be 1 day clocks, but those are probably all 7 day or 8 day clocks. Okay. So they were up to the 31 day clock, and then a genius came along. I don't know who it was. I don't know their name. They're lost to history, I'll bet. Somebody probably knows who the first person was, but they created this. This is the anniversary clock. It doesn't use a pendulum, right? It's a completely different design. It uses torsion. So instead of swinging back and forth, whoever it was, we'll assume it was a guy. It could have been a woman, but, you know, it was probably a dude. Could have been a woman. I don't know. I'm not trying to insult any of the women. I think it was a guy. Let's just assume it was a woman. So whenever she did this, she figured out that that whenever the pendulum swings back and forth, there's a lot of wasted energy there. Because the pendulum would get to the top of its swing and slow down, and then it had to go back, and, you know, all of that moving back and forth, it's wasting all kinds of energy. So they came up with the idea, she came up with the idea, that if you had a torsion system where something twisted back and forth, it would use much less energy, and so you could design the escapement completely differently, and you would only have to wind it once every 400 days. So this clock is almost a perpetual motion machine. You wind it one time a year. And if you skip a month, that's okay too. Try to wind it in January sometime. Wow. So, yeah. So I have several of these. I think they were a big deal in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Kundo, I think it's Kundo, was the biggest brand. Now, this is amateur repair time, people, so I don't know how to fix one of these. This one may not need fixing. It sure looks like it's moving, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know if that's right or not, but I haven't wound it up or anything. All I did was carry it in the room here, and it started moving. So they make several different designs and looks, and most of them, though, were a little taller than this, had a smaller dial, and had a glass globe over the top. Now, I've got a bunch of those. The reason we're not working on one of those first is because I think this one might actually be working. It kind of looks like it is. So I'm hoping it'll be a little easier to service this one. And then once we kind of look through it and figure out how they work, I can try to fix some of those other ones. The good thing about this is you can get most of the parts for these still, right? And they're not worth a bunch of money or anything, but they're cool. I bought one of these at an antique store, and there's this antique mall here in town that's huge. It's like the size of a Walmart. And it was like $10 or something. And I was carrying it up to the front, and the girl that was ringing me up said that whenever she was little, she always heard them called princess clocks. So it could be that people called them that too. I don't know. The anniversary clock, before I knew like the deal with them, I would have assumed that just meant that it was like a present that you give people traditionally for their anniversary or something. But that's not it. It's an anniversary clock because you only have to wind it once a year. Nuts. So a lot of them have this kind of plated finish, and it gets all screwed up, right? So, you know, you can't really clean that up. It's the plating is coming off. And, you know, that's just how it is. So the whole idea of the torsion thing is that it has to be kind of perfectly centered, or you won't get your 400 days out of it. So see how that little thing hangs down in the center there? What you would do is you would set it on a shelf, and then there are little wheels right here on the feet, and you would turn those feet There's 3 of them on this one there, and one in the middle on the back. You would turn those feet to level the thing. So like if you're too far this way, you would turn this foot out a little bit and it would make that move that way just by lifting this side up just slightly, you know. And you get it just perfect once you set it on whatever shelf you're going to set it on, because remember, it's going to be there for a year. And you get it just right in the middle, and then you wind the thing up and you put the dome back over it so nobody messes with it. And then it just sits there and does this for a year. What an awesome invention. Think about that. Think about the significance of that. Think of the audacity of that. For anybody to even attempt that, you know? I mean, it's just incredible. So they make a clock that works for a day. Somebody says, oh, that's not good enough. So they make a clock with a spring that works for 7 days. Somebody says, oh, that's not good enough. So they make a clock with a spring that works for 31 days. And then some dude, some chick, some woman, I don't want to offend the women, so we'll just assume it was a woman. Some woman comes up with the idea, I'm going to make mine work for a year. And then they did it. And the way they did it was they just completely designed it different than the other ones. They abandoned what everybody else was doing and came up with this crap, and it worked. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Let's turn around and see what the back looks like. So as you can see, most of the movement is open. A lot of it's just, you know, kind of mechanical, just suspended. Right? So the label is actually still on this one. It says Original Black Forest Kundo Anniversary 400-day clock. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. And then it says above it, over 50 years. Well, that means that they would have been before the 40s probably. So I don't know when the first ones were. But if they had been in business for 50 years by now, there's no way this thing is newer than the late 60s. It's probably from the 50s. So see if we can read any of it. Made in West Germany. No zero. See, it says no 0 joules. And then the adjustment, what's that saying? Can't tell the other part. And this one says Kenninger and Obergefell. So I'm not sure of the significance of that. Let's see if we can see the inside the gearing. Now see this whole thing is kind of complex with adjustments and things, right? So that's going to change the timing of it. So like if the clock's running fast or slow, you probably adjust that. There is a metal wire. It almost looks like a guitar string or a scroll saw blade that connects down here and then goes through this tube, which can be removed up to the top, and it's hanging clipped in place up at the top there, right? And you can see that the gearing is actually kind of simple. So you have that's the box where you wind it. And so there is a spring inside that box. But the difference between this one and the other ones is it doesn't use the pendulum. It uses, I guess this is a pendulum too, but it uses this weighted torsion system for the escapement, right? And so you've got that, and then you've got nice, tight metal gears here. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 7 total. So 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 6 gears, or pinions, or whatever you want to call them. You're looking at all 6 of them right there. So it's much simpler than most of the clocks, but keep in mind it doesn't have a strike or a chime. It just keeps time. So I guess they could also, yeah, they could make a pendulum clock that has the same number of gears, I suppose, or pretty close to it. So I believe the thing is working. So I think what we'd probably need to do is oil it. Now you could disassemble it and oil everything, but you know, the proper way to do it is to disassemble everything, clean it, oil it, buff the pinion ends, replace any of the bushings that are screwed up, all of that. But this is amateur repair time. So if I do that, I'm going to end up with a clock that doesn't work, that right now appears that it might actually be working. So that's probably not a good idea. I've had this clock for several months. I've never wound it. So I think what's probably going on is it needs to be wound, right? So we need to oil it, clean it as best we can, wind it, and then set it up and see if the thing will keep time. Okay, so I removed the little cover so you can see the little pendulum hanger, or whatever it's called. And it just, as this spins, and it doesn't go like that. It does much less than that. I don't know how many times it goes back and forth, but we'll find out, hopefully, at the end of the video. What a brilliant design. And you see what's going on up here. So that's the escapement. And that goes on for 400 days. Incredible. I mean, that's just incredible. So to get to the front plate, we have to remove the face, which means we have to remove the hands. There is a little pin holding them in place, and it is tiny. It looks to me like it's more narrow on the left than the right. So we need to remove it from the right, it looks like. So luckily I got those off without breaking anything. Like I said though, you can get a lot of parts for these. And one of the reasons is because they sold a ton of them. I'm not the only one that thought they were cool. Okay, so there is a little pin in this post. And then another one on that side that hold the face on. There's a third one. I guess there might be 4. Those posts are a little bit, those pins are a little bigger though, so I should be able to remove those with a small pair of needle nose pliers. Well, I'm going to abandon the idea of taking the face off because no matter how I pull on these things, I can't get them out, and I don't want to force it because, you know, you're just asking for trouble. So I think I can, this is the one that I tried. See how I'm starting to mar up the pin. All of this stuff is so delicate. I don't want to pull with a whole bunch of force, because if something moves or jerks or breaks, we're in big trouble, right? It's very delicate. It doesn't need me ham-fisting it. So I think what I'll do is just oil them from the back of the front plate, which everything's exposed, so you should be able to do that. I've got a little oiler with a spout on it. I should be able to get to it. I guess you could, when I get a little more confident with them on future ones, you could just disassemble the back plate and get to it as well and not even take the face off. But it'd be nicer if you could take the face off so you could get to those pinion bushings, but what can you do? I don't want to tear up the pins. Okay, so let's get the oil. All right, so I looked it up to see what's up. And the guys that work on these, that know all about them, the way they do it is they take it all apart, they clean everything, and they put it back together. And then most of them put just a little bit of oil on the pivots. There are a couple experts out there who really know their stuff that swear up and down you shouldn't put any oil on it. I did, so. But they say that since these move so slowly, and just because of the way of the torsion instead of the pendulum, that there's very little wear on the pivots. They never wear out. They didn't have oil from the factory. And plus, they sit underneath a glass dome their entire life, so they don't get any dust or dirt on the pivots. And it's some pretty big time dudes that really know their stuff saying that. However, most people said they oil them. So what I did was I barely lightly oiled them just as best as I could. And then I tried to clean up that back plate. I couldn't get the thing apart. You saw what I was making it worse. I cleaned up this back plate with some chrome polish, and it got rid of a lot of the ugliness that was on it, but it can't make worn off plating come back, so it can't do anything for this. So I think what we'll do is try to level the thing up and just see if she'll run. Maybe it's fine. It kind of looks like it's fine. This is interesting. The speed adjustment works in such a way that it makes these balls have a larger circumference or smaller, which makes them spin faster if they're smaller, kind of like an ice skater. They put their hands up over their head and they spin real fast. Or if they put their hands out to the side so they're wider, they spin slower. This works the same way. So let me find a key that'll fit it, and I'll put the hands back on it, and we'll see if the thing wants to cooperate. And then if we get this one fixed, next I'll work on some of the ones that I've got that are messed up or need parts and stuff, and we'll see if we can cobble them back together. All right, folks. So if you're going to work on old clocks, you got to have a bunch of old keys. Now that one says $25. There's no way I paid $25 for a key. It must have had a clock with it at some point. So I have found a key that fits it, and I wound it up a little bit. And then I tried to get that pendulum to kind of hang in the middle by adjusting the little feet. And then it wasn't doing anything. But then I started thinking, you know, there has to be a unmoved mover. Somebody has to start this into into movement, you know. So I pushed it one way a little bit. And it is very slowly doing its thing. Here, let me see if I can show you. See it?
So that just may be how it's supposed to work. I don't know. I mean, it's not doing much, but I guess if it doesn't touch that side, it should spin just right, and it should, if it's geared properly, it should keep good time. And if you look, I mean, it is turning, but just barely. See the logo down below? So if it has 8 beats per minute, which I think is what I read, then that's 40 movements from one marker to the other. So it doesn't sweep, you know, like a modern clock, wristwatch or something would, or something with a second hand, an electric clock. And it doesn't move the minute little movements that a pendulum clock does, or a traditional pendulum clock does. It's moving 1/40th of a movement. But so I don't know though if the pendulum's spinning fast enough. I don't know how fast that's supposed to spin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it and then come back in an hour and see if it looks like it's keeping good time. All right, so this is the speed that it has settled down to. All right, and it is about in 1 hour, 3 minutes fast. So that I need to adjust that way out by turning that little adjustment on the bottom, and I need to do it carefully without breaking the suspension spring. So let me turn it a little bit, and then we'll let it sit overnight and see if we can figure out tomorrow how off it is. It's going to take a long time to get this set right, but it looks like it just barely moves, which makes sense if it's supposed to last for a year. All right, so I have let it sit for a whole day. It is about 11:56 at night right now, and this is saying 12:24. So it's gaining 28 minutes in a day, or something like that. Now, last night it gained 5 minutes in an hour. So I think I just need to adjust this a lot more. I guess it spinning too fast is probably a good thing. I don't know. I would think that would be better than too slow. You see the adjustment there? There is a lot of adjustment. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that screw is supposed to touch those four things and push them down, or if it's just moving the I guess if that middle piece right there went up, that would push these out. So I need to do whatever makes that go up, right? So there's that. And then the other thing is, it has to have a beat, like a regular pendulum clock. So let's see if I can tell how to do it. Well, if I can find it. not seeing where it's moving. There we are. So basically, that's how it moves. It's pretty well in beat. Okay, so you watch that, and whenever the gear moves, this overswings a little bit after it does that. And then it goes back the other way, and the gear moves the other way, right? And whenever it does, this overswings that way a little bit. You can adjust that with this screw on the top. And basically that's going to turn the I don't know what they call it, but the headpiece in there a little bit, so that it's basically turning how that is suspended. You want it to over travel that way an equal amount that it over travels this way. And if you look, I looked at a video that someone had put online of theirs actually working. So look at this ball. See how it's about right here? Now watch it go around. Now here's the second ball. So about right here is the middle spot. So that one overswung that way. 1, 2. That one overswings that way. So it's twisting about half a twist each turn, right? And on that little pallet thing that moves, whenever it does this, it will go just a little bit farther. And then it'll go all the way back. And then it'll do this. And whenever it does, it goes just a little bit farther. You can have that way out of adjustment. Look, it's midnight. You can hear the chimes. It's in the other room. Yeah, so we're 29 minutes fast. So the thing is in pretty good, the beat is pretty good on it. I think I just need to adjust these way out, you know, and it's just going to take a little bit of time and trial and error to get it just right. So let me adjust it way out, and then we'll give it another day or so and see what we're getting. But I think we're about 29 minutes fast in the day. I think I set it about midnight last night. It might have been a little earlier, but something like that. Okay, so I just adjusted it so it's moving faster now. But you can see how basically it has raised that middle piece up, which is going to, since it's fixed, pull the top of each one of those 4 legs back a little bit, which will make these all go out just a little bit. So by turning that down, we've basically raised that middle piece up inside of that groove. So it's like this. As we raise that up, since that little groove is slanted, it's going like this, right? So it's pushing out on the bottom of each of those. They're just slightly wider than they were. So if my numbers are right, let's say it's been 23 hours. If we lost 5 minutes, or we gained 5 minutes in 1 hour, then we should have gained 2.5 hours or so. 115 minutes in 23 hours. So almost 2 hours and 15 in 23 hours. But instead we gained 28 minutes. So I did slow it down last night by doing this. I just didn't go far enough. I'm going to rewind, or I'm going to go back and look at my video and see how far down that was when we first started. So let me go check that compared to where we are now. All right, so when I first started and we got 5 minutes in 1 hour, it was adjusted just a little south of the midpoint. And so I raised it up just a little bit by turning this about one turn. It came up just a little bit. And so I have now turned it even more. I may have went even too far, but we're way up here now. And you can see, since this is a fixed point and this is a pivot, since that is diagonal, as this goes up, it's going to necessitate that this goes back, which is going to make all of this go out, right? And it's, you know, it's, they've figured it all out a lot long before I came along, but it's a really cool way of regulating it. They're basically just making it wider like an ice skater to slow it down. This is one of those things where it's mind-blowingly well designed. And this is old enough, you know, it's probably from the 50s. This is old enough that it was still well designed. They hadn't done anything to make it cheap yet. There's nothing plastic on it yet, you know. Just a hell of a contraption. Well, it's been another full day. And right now it is 12:04. So it has gained another 13 minutes or so. I can't adjust it anymore. Right, you know, there might be a little bit left, but I think what's going on is this, either I did a little research on it. If the fork up there is in the wrong spot, that's the fork there. See it moving slightly. If the fork is in the wrong spot, it will flutter, they said. When basically what that means is it will be working fine and then it'll get to a certain spot and that fork won't catch it quite right and this thing will go brrr, and you'll gain about 5 minutes real quick. I haven't seen it do that. If you come back after this has been running for 3 or 4 hours, it'll be a little bit fast. So it's continuously getting faster. So what that usually means is that the suspension spring is the wrong thickness, which very well could be. Or it could be that the suspension spring, so the thicker the suspension spring is, the faster the clock runs. So it could be that the suspension spring, well, that's a tongue twister, is filthy, is rusty, and all of that, which makes it thicker, which makes it run faster. That's my working theory. So it could just be, since the suspension spring's old, that it is making it run too fast. That's my working theory. So I'm going to have to order some more of these suspension springs and see if I can get one in there that will keep better time. This is about a 9-inch tall clock with the dome on it, which means that this is a Kundo Mini. I've been researching all this. They called it the Mini. It's just the movement is slightly smaller than their full-size ones. The full-size ones are about 11 to 12 inches tall. So, through the magic of YouTube, maybe I can show you the difference. Yeah, see, you can see it's a mini. It's not one of the full-size ones. They're all bigger. So I pick these up all the time. Every time I see one and it's less than $20, I buy it. Now, so these are the full-size ones, the standards. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 standards, and they're not all Kundos. This one is a hotter something. This one says heirloom, so that's, I don't know what that is. And this one is actually an Elgin. I thought I had a Schatz somewhere, which was a big name too. And then, so these are all standards. That's a mini. And then you have this, which is a midget, they call it. So they made all different sizes, but mainly 3 sizes. So that suspension spring, there is a standard thickness depending on which one you're putting it in. So if you know kind of what movement you have, you can order them. So I'm going to order some. I got to fix these other ones too. So the standards take 1 size suspension spring if they're all Kundos. The mini takes a different size suspension spring, all of them. And then the midget takes a different size suspension spring. So I'm going to order some, and hopefully we'll get it to slow down a little bit. I've got some of these that have other busted ones. So now that I've researched it and figured out that there's 2 or 3 different sizes, I'll just order several of all 3 of those sizes. And but I'm going to leave all these alone. I wanted to fix this one first because I think it's kind of working, you know. So if I can get it dialed in where it's working the way it's supposed to work and everything's cool, then I can work on one of these ones that's completely not working. So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like these old vintage clocks, check out this video, which is a similar one of that one right there. We'll see you on the next one.